We open with loads of different places, and the doctor keeps bursting in and saying, ham and cheese toasty and a pumpkin spice latte. But then we time jump back to the beginning, where the doctor's all depressed because he's got no friends. Then we meet this guy, Trev, who the doctor recruits straight away. But Trev then gets game ended, and the doctor walks into the hotel room of Joy. There's this briefcase that makes you die if you let go of it after touching it. And Joy accidentally touches it. Oh no. This Silurian bloke dies on the bed. It's actually quite sad. How are they going to get out of this? But then the doctor walks in from the door and says, oh, I can't tell you anything, doctor. You've just got to live your life now, and then walks out the other side. And then we get this really lovely sequence where the doctor lives with Anita and works with Anita for a whole year before going back through the door and greeting himself. Doc and Joy are then back in the Time Hotel where they wander through some doors, and the doctor abuses Joy verbally just to get a reaction out of her. And we find out that Joy's mum died on COVID year and she couldn't see her because of Boris's cheese and wine party. She is annoyed. Then a massive dinosaur gobbles them up, and then they open this safe and there's a massive ball inside, and then Joy becomes a star, and not just any star, she becomes the North Star, the star that Jesus followed, or something along those lines. The doctor says the name of the title, Joy to the World, and then roll credits. Okay, Joy to the World was an episode that I enjoyed significantly less than the Church on Ruby Road, the other Christmas special. And I didn't think I did at the time. At the time of watching, I was like, that was a really good episode. But then I went back on rewatch and it just didn't hit the same. It didn't feel too good, in my opinion. I wasn't too big of a fan of the overall concept. The Time Hotel was cool. The bit with Anita was cool. But just the plot was just a bit naff. It was a bit non-existent, really. There was this briefcase, which I guess was cool. But then what? Literally then what? They open this safe and there's a massive star inside and Joy becomes the star. Anyway, I will say I'm a big fan of the Stephen Moffat titles, you know, the cold open, where we see all these different places and the doctors in all of them being like ham and cheese toasty and a pumpkin spice latte. Because when we see that clip before the episode, we're like, this makes no sense. And I like what Stephen Moffat does. He does it in a lot of his episodes. He really plays with time and the structure of the episode. One of my favourite episodes that Stephen Moffat has ever written is The World Enough and Time. And that episode opens with the Doctor and Bill and Missy on a spaceship, and Bill gets shot. Spoilers. Bill gets shot. And we then cut back to the beginning of the episode and we learn how they got there. For 5-10 minutes we learn the process to them getting there, and Bill's like, okay fine, we'll go, but just promise you won't get me killed. And then boom, we cut to Bill, who's been shot, and the Doctor's face is like, oh no, I've let this happen. So yeah, that's that. But yeah, it was a bit different to that, but it was also quite good. You know, we get the Orient Express, we get like Mount Everest or something, we get the Blitz, and we get Joy entering a lonely little hotel with Anita looking a bit cold to start with. I thought Anita looked a bit miserable. But I later grew to love Anita. That's probably my highlight of the episode. But Joy enters her hotel room, and she's there, and then all of a sudden, a Silurian walks through the door, and then the Doctor walks through the door and is like, ham and cheese toast and a pumpkin spice latte, and then the titles roll, which, yeah, that's the cold open. And then they do that thing I mentioned earlier, where after the titles, we go completely back to just the start. We get the build-up to how that happened. And the Doctor is you know, he's got no friends, he's a bit depressed, he's like, oh, I miss Ruby Roo, I miss her. And I'm not gonna lie, first time I watched, I was a bit upset as well, because I did love Ruby. And I do love Ruby now. And I'm a bit gutted she didn't get an ending. But yeah, Doctor meets Trev, and we immediately grow to love Trev. That's something Moffat's always done. I think Russell does characters better, but I think Moffat makes us care about characters quicker. So Trev was in this episode for 10 minutes before he got killed, and immediately everyone online, and myself included, had this attachment to Trev. We loved him, we think he's a nice guy, and I'm not sure how Moffat does it, but he does it in a way where when this character does die, even if it's 8 minutes after we meet him, is really sad. Really, really sad. But anyway, the Doctor notices something's up with the briefcase, so he follows the Silurian into Joy's room. And I actually quite like Joy in this moment. I'm a bit gutted we didn't get enough of Nicola Coughlan, in my opinion. Like, she was bigged up to be the companion for this episode, a bit like how Kylie Minogue was in 2007. But there wasn't a lot of her, and all the stuff that we saw of her in this, we'd already seen of her in teaser trailers and preview clips and things like that you know, I didn't feel like we got enough of her personally. But I do think when we did see her, like this scene here where the Doctor and the Silurian are sort of debating over what's happening with this briefcase and what's going on, Joy's reaction is very humane, very, very funny, because obviously Nicola Coughlan, very famous for Bridgerton, I think it's Bridgerton, but I will always know her as Claire from Derry Girls, and obviously Derry Girls is a comedy, and seeing her sort of be a bit comedic in the character of Joy was very, very funny. I'm a big fan. And then the Silurian dies, and I must admit, this did make me feel something. I was a bit, again, it's one of those things where Moffat makes you care about characters quickly, and I don't know how, because this Silurian has been on screen for 2 minutes, and immediately I am upset. I'm upset that he's dead. And I felt for him, and he started talking about his family and his kids and where he comes from, and it was like, oh, Moff, what are you doing to me, dog? And the doctor's all confused, like, oh, how am I gonna get out of this? And then he comes through again, and he's like, oh, hello. He doesn't do that. He's like, you got to learn the long way round, which is another subtle hint to Moff's era, I reckon, because he did used to say that a lot. He'd be like, we're doing this, the long way round. You know, I'm going to Gallifrey, the long way round. Amy, you've got to remember, the long way round. So yeah, it was very, very, very Moffat. But then we get my favourite sequence of the entire episode, and that is Anita. Legend that is Anita. And she was class. And we get these lovely like sequences of the Doctor working at this hotel with Anita for a whole year. Because he's got to wait a whole year to be able to go back for the door to open, for him to go back to the Time Hotel. And yeah, it was really nice seeing him and Anita bond. You know, he's explaining to her, there's a scene where she's like, it just cuts for like a second, and she's like moving statues, and it's like obvious they're talking about the weeping angels. There's a bit where I really like this bit where the Doctor picks up a plunger. So he's having to plunge a toilet because he works at a hotel, and he's got a plunger, and he looks at it and goes, "Is this loaded?" Which is obviously a hint toward like a nod towards the Daleks, which I loved. I loved it, man. I did love this whole sequence with Anita, and I was gutted that she didn't become a companion yet. But then again, Ncuti's gone now, so it's like, is she ever going to be a companion? Probs not, you know what I mean? Which I'm gutted about. I am gutted about. But she did come back, so... Anyway, again, we've known Anita for 5-10 minutes, and we already care about her, because when the Doctor has to leave her to go to the Time Hotel again, it's very emotional. It's very emotional, the Doctor saying goodbye to her. I do have a little nitpick with this episode that it is a lot of just, we meet someone, they die, or they go. We meet someone else, they die, or they go. We meet someone else, they go, or they die. We meet someone else, they go, or they die. Like, you know what I mean? It's just very much like we're just meeting people and then they're getting binned off. It's done greatly, but it just is like, is that the whole episode? This bit also makes no sense. The Doctor's trapped to that one hotel. That's just how it works. He's trapped to this hotel. That's why he can't leave. He works with Anita in the hotel. But for some reason he can somehow walk to New York to get through the new door, which makes complete no sense at all. Anyway, he comes back to get Joy, and they open this box, and there's a star inside. Yay! I actually can't quite remember, but there's something to do with Trev, and I do love Trev. Trev's a good guy. I like Trev. But yeah, Joy then becomes a star. She's the star of the show. Big fan of Nicola's performance here. She's very, very good. She's a good... I was about to say she's a good girl. Jesus Christ. I will say I did like the triumphant moment. And looking back now, it's even sadder, because I know what happens at the end. Stay tuned for that. But I found the triumphant moment... Triumph is a good emotion for me. Or like a good... Like, it gets me in the feels when I see, like, a triumphant moment. Oh my god, this is... Yeah. And when Joy is the star of Bethlehem and the Doctor shouts up joy to the world, it really does make me like, oh, that's really nice. Like, that is a really nice ending. There were some people complaining, saying that... There were two complaints. A being it's a bit disrespectful to Christianity, which I'm not a Christian. I don't see how it can be offensive, but then again, I'm not a Christian. I just think it's the star. You know, the star wasn't put there by God, or was it? Like, I don't know. Correct me. But from what I'm aware, the star was just there anyway. So if it's just joy anyway, I don't think it adds anything to it. But prove me wrong if I'm wrong. And the other complaint was we didn't need it to say Bethlehem at the end. But we did, because it said throughout the whole episode, wherever you went, it would pop up on screen and say Mount Everest, 1805. Well, probably not 1805, but it would say the location and the date. And it said Bethlehem, 0. And people were like, oh, that was it's too obvious. They've told us. I got it. But they didn't just put it there at the end randomly. It was a thing throughout the whole episode. Come on, did you watch the same episode as me? But yeah, there you go. Roll credits. End of the episode. I didn't mind it. It was more of no, it wasn't. I was about to say it's more of an adventure than the Church on Ruby Road, but it wasn't. It was more timey-wimey. Was it? Because the Church on Ruby Road's better, I must admit. I didn't think so when it came out. When this came out, I was like, this is miles better than Ruby Road, but no, changed my mind. I much prefer Ruby Road. I'm going to give Joy to the World a 3 out of 5, which is not too bad, not too shabby. That's about a 6, 7 out of 10. So do with that what you will. Thank you very much for watching. Have a blessed day. I love you all to bits. And yeah, I'm going to go get some food now. So see you in a grizzle. Goodbye. On to the robot revolution.